I believe you're muted.
I believe I was. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the June 15th MTD Board of Directors meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do a roll call of the Board of Directors. Director Perotti.
Here.
Good morning. Director Limburger is absent today. Director McQuarrie.
Here.
Director Sheeler.
Present.
Vice Chair Tabor.
Here.
And Chair Davis is present. We do have a quorum. That would take us to the report regarding the posting of the agenda, please. Madam Clerk.
Good morning. The agenda was posted on June 11, 2021 at MTD's administrative office, mailed and emailed to those on the agenda list, and posted to MTD's website.
Thank you very much. The consent calendar has two items. Item 4, the approval of the prior minutes for the meeting of June 1st, 2021, and the cash report for the periods between May 22nd through June 4th, 2021. Do I have any questions or comments on either of those two items? Not seeing any. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
Director McQuarrie moving to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second. Perotti.
Director Perotti is seconding. Roll call on that is, we'll start with you, Paula. Director Perotti.
Aye.
Director McQuarrie.
Yes.
Director Sheeler.
Yes.
Vice Chair Tabor.
Yes.
Chair Davis votes yes also. The consent calendar is unanimously approved. Takes us to item 6. This is public comment. This is for items for the public to comment on that are not on today's agenda, but within the purview of the MTD. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak under public comment this morning?
I have not received any public comment.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Item 7. This is an update regarding COVID-19 related requirements in MTD's declaration of fiscal and public health emergency due to COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Estrada, General Manager Estrada, you want to basically lead this off?
I will. Good morning, Chair Davis, members of the board. Mary Gregg, our Chief Operating Officer, Safety Officer, will be assisting me with this presentation as we kind of walk you through where MTD is at this point, where we stand with a number of the different requirements related to the COVID pandemic. Obviously today, June 15th, it's an exciting day. You know, California is reopening. This is, I think, something we've all really look forward to, and it's exciting for us. However, what we're going to really need is everybody's patience. Definitely over the next week or two, as we start to work our way through the transition back into reopening. And just, you know, to give you a little overview of what all the different agencies that have participated in trying to keep our community safe throughout the pandemic. At the federal level, you have the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. You also have the TSA, which provides directives to public transit operators like MTD, which is where our face mask requirement, for example, on board the buses and the transportation hubs comes from. So those are two entities that we are, obviously following the guidance and the requirements. At the state level, you have the governor's office, you have Cal OSHA as well, as it pertains to workplace requirements. So over the next week or two, a lot of these things hopefully will start to become aligned. And I think Cal OSHA, for example, has a meeting later this week, Thursday, where we'll hear more about where they hopefully will end up as it pertains to workplace requirements. So with that, we're gonna start to walk you through it. And I'd like to start with the face mask and physical distancing. And I'm gonna hand that off to Ms. Gregg to go ahead and provide you an update where we are today, which actually has changed just a little bit from when we wrote the staff report and released it a few days ago. Mary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Estrada. Well, good morning, Chair Davis and members of the board. It's very nice to see you. And it's nice to see you on this day, as Mr. Estrada started off by saying it's an exciting day. There's a lot of changes on the horizon for us, and we've come a long way to get here, certainly as an organization, as a state, as a nation, and so on. So as Mr. Estrada stated in our staff report, there's been a couple of changes. First and foremost, as he was mentioning, from a federal standpoint, MTD has been following the regulations set by the CDC. And once the CDC put their face mask policy in place specifically for our industry, transportation, the TSA followed suit with emergency executive order to have guidelines in place similar to the CDC. Well, last Thursday, the CDC amended their face mask order through an enforcement discretion. So essentially, they are not requiring face masks outdoors at any areas of conveyances or outdoors in any transit hubs. But the TSA enforcement, or I should say their emergency order, is in place until September 13. So we're really waiting to hear from the TSA on their security directive to see if they're going to be making some changes. The CDC has essentially stated that they're requesting federal partners to exercise similar enforcement discretion, but the TSA hasn't come out with anything yet. So we're pretty much status quo from that standpoint right now. While the opening up with the governor outdoors to allowing face masks to be worn is a great day. Certainly for us, we are status quo until we hear otherwise from the TSA, and MTD will follow those regulations. Now, as far as the workplace is concerned, we are waiting to hear from Cal OSHA. The Occupational Safety and Health Standards Board will have a regular meeting this Thursday. And they've had several meetings in the last few weeks, actually, to look at different revisions that Cal OSHA has put forward regarding their what's called their emergency temporary standards. And the ETS is really the guidelines that have been one of those layers for us to follow, but it's specific to the workplace. And it is expected that this Thursday, the standards board will pass the newest revision that's coming before them. And essentially that aligns more with the governor's reopening plans. As it pertains to face masks, that would mean that workers would be allowed to wear face masks outdoors. Face masks would stay in place indoors. There would be no changes to that. So really what we're talking about here with all of these various governmental agencies and the changes is relative to outdoors. So the revisions in the emergency temporary standards really reflects a more consistent alignment with the governor's reopening guidelines. The big difference for Cal OSHA is this focus on vaccinated versus unvaccinated. So we're just really waiting to hear what specifics are going to be passed on Thursday. So I think the messaging right now, as Mr. Estrada mentioned, was just we're asking for patience from everybody, from MTD employees to the public, as we really look to this week as a transition stage.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because the transitions are always difficult, and this one's really is a little unclear given the various sources of direction. Any questions on this particular subject matter the mask and the direction coming down from the various agencies. Director Prodi?
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair Davis. What will maybe I missed this but I need to be clear. What's the ruling on people coming into the bus? Are they to wear masks in the bus while they're riding the bus? Yes?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that question. There is definitely a distinction in all regulatory guidelines right now between indoors and outdoors. So there have been no changes made by the CDC or in the governor's reopening guidelines. If you are boarding, alighting, or traveling, at all times you are required to wear a face mask. So really what that means at our transit center right now is outdoors face masks are still required until we hear from the TSA. If that changes, then we'll address those at that time. If you're entering the transit center or you're waiting at our bus stop, as soon as you step onto that bus as well, face masks are required.
I'm just, I guess my concern, I agree with that. My concern is, people are confused and, how are they going to react to like, oh, no, you have to wear them inside the bus. So I guess we'll take that day by day, but that's why I was asking the question and I'll be happy to get the word out as well.
And I appreciate that. And I think it's a good segue to let the board know that and the public watching this, that over the course of the last 2 weeks leading up to June 15th, working with our marketing department, we have been kind of reinforcing the messaging on face masks still being required. Of course, at that time when we started a refresh on that marketing campaign and communication through social media, signage on the buses at the transit center, as well as messaging that we put on our CAD system on our buses. All of that was done as a kind of a lead up to today. What changed for us was this CDC face mask policy amendment that just happened last Thursday. So that messaging's still out there. We've been working with our supervisors and our operations team for messaging. We've been talking to folks at the transit center to let them know that this was still going to be in place. So agreed, it creates some confusion. But as far as MTD, we have been reaching out to the public to try and bridge that gap.
Thank you.
Mary, I have a question because it's clear that TSA says when you're boarding and you're on the bus, you must wear a mask. It doesn't say anything about the transit facilities itself. I happen to be in Portland right now, and again, in the airport or on the airport grounds, you must wear a mask.
Yeah.
Do the guidelines say anything? I'm really thinking about transit center in that regard. You said it's okay without mask outside, but you must wear it inside. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's the CDC right now. The TSA, excuse me, kind of defines this as far as areas of conveyances or outdoors in transit hubs. So if an outdoor area doesn't exist at a transit hub or an area of conveyance, meaning like an airport, consider that outdoor area outdoors. But for us, we are a transit hub. And so right now TSA would require and does face masks outdoors.
Okay,
so
good.
It's not aligned right now, obviously, with the CDC.
Got it. Yeah. All right. But correct me if I'm wrong. TSA is a rule. CDC is a guidance.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is
good.
absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay. Good.
So we are required to follow TSA as of today, actually through September 13th, unless they change it.
Great. Thanks. Director McQuarrie.
Yeah, this has been going on obviously for quite a while, and there's been a lot of controversy about mask or not, no mask, and it really puts the burden on our drivers and the people at the transit center. And what are the instructions to our employees when they run into a problem about a person with a mask? Do they not allow them to board the bus, or don't have the bus leave the bus stop or the transit center when people don't abide? I mean, what are we telling our employees?
So I want to get back to the TSA, what Chair Davis was saying, because the TSA emergency order really defines for us the requirements to follow face mask guidance the CDC had set in place relative to allowing people to actually travel. So as of right now, if you are not following the face mask requirement, then TSA says, no, you may not travel. And with training that we do with our supervisors, our operations team, we follow a same pattern that we do for other policies that MTD has in place in order to ride the bus. And that is, we educate, we communicate. It's in large part why we started this campaign about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We've got information that we've provided to our supervisors who are on the ground in order to have exact communication pieces, to have conversations with our passengers and the public. We've been having meetings with our supervisors to help them with this. We've been hearing back from the drivers. So our standard protocols are in place that we follow when we come up against anything relative to working with a passenger to understand the rules. And I would say, while today may is this transition of some potential confusion, and we're out there in full force communicating with our folks at the transit center, I think the public has been really receptive to following the face mask policy on board our buses, and the Santa Barbara community has been great. I think Mr. Estrada would probably support that and some other things that he's going to be speaking about, but for the most part, we're doing great out there.
Okay, I understand, but there's always those people that choose not to do what they're supposed to do. And what does a bus driver do, for example, if a person refuses to put on a mask when they get on the bus? Do they stop the bus and call the supervisor? I mean, have we given them direction on stopping service or whatever it takes to get around that person that refuses to follow the rules? I mean, what have we told our employees?
Yes, if we find ourselves in a situation where while a bus is in transit, a passenger decides to take a face mask off, the bus driver will provide them with a gentle reminder of what the policies are, and typically people respond. If we find ourselves in a situation where an individual just absolutely refuses to wear a mask, they are informed that the bus is going to have to pull over at the next stop, and a supervisor is called. And the supervisor will come out, they'll speak with the passenger, they'll explain the situation, and then depending on the response, we go from there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't put an onus on our employees that really puts them in a dangerous spot. So, okay, good. I'm glad to see they've got clear direction.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that that you brought that up, because it's been a lot over the course of the last year for our drivers to communicate with the passengers, do what they need to do out there, provide the customer service that we're really well known for. And we have so many regular passengers out there that are so supportive of our drivers that we are finding that this happens, but it's not as prevalent as you would think, because people have really lined up to help support our organization through this. But our supervisors will come out, and everybody is trained on how to diffuse the situation and communicate to the passengers what the rules are.
Great, thanks.
I think it goes without saying that the board really appreciates what the staff has done over the year to deal with all these situations. Because again, to our knowledge, while there have been some minor issues, right? It's been a tough go for our drivers and the people at the transit center. And again, somehow you can at some point let them know that the board recognized the efforts that they put forward. Other questions, Mr. Estrada?
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to follow up on some things Ms. Gregg said. Also, with the 15th, with the announcement that we anticipated today from the governor, our operations team did meet with the supervisors in the field, our operations supervisors over the past week. We brought them in, we talked about today and, the confusion and the transition over the next week or two. And we've doubled up on the number of supervisors at the transit center. Plus, we've got management dedicated in the field as well over the next week or two to provide additional support, because we recognize, as you're saying, that the past year it has been a challenge, and our frontline employees, the drivers and the supervisors in particular, have been on the front line. We've worked with them to do everything we can to support them and treat these matters like any other safety issues. So I wanted to commend them for their work, and Ms. Gregg and the operations team for what they've done. But we still have this transition we've got to get through. So we have been on alert for that. So
Great, absolutely. Mr. Strada, Director Tabor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My memory is that the MTD mandated mask wearing before the city, state, and federal regulators did. So it's a commendable step on our part, taking that leap at a time when we didn't have the support of the government, other government agencies behind us. And I believe at that time we were providing masks. Are we still doing that?
I'll go ahead and take that one. Yes, thank you for that. We are providing masks. That is also part of what we discussed with the supervisors last week. Our road supervisors in particular, they're really the ones that are out there in full force that are meeting the drivers online. And they have face masks and other inventory of that available. Drivers have them available to them as well to hand out to our passengers.
Good. I think that can alleviate a lot of confusing situations. I found myself on Saturday running into CVS. I got about 10 steps into the store and kind of went, hey, something's funny here. I'm not wearing a mask. So I can see somebody easily getting to the bus stop and hopping on the bus and kind of going, oh yeah, I left my mask at home. So that's good to hear. We can take the proper steps in that situation. Thanks.
Welcome.
Really good point. Really good point. Mr. Strada, back to you.
okay. On the face mask, I think we've covered it. Obviously, it's a fluid situation, but physical distancing as well. A lot of the requirements from the state of California have been lifted as of, I think, midnight last night. Where MTD stands currently is we're allowing seated load equivalent. So for example, on a 40-foot bus, that's about 38 passengers. That's manageable for us with the loads we're, this summer, that sort of thing. We'll closely monitor how things go over the next few weeks. And it's possible we could lift all those restrictions maybe by early July. I would certainly hope we would be able to before August, when UCSB and City College come back, as well as K-12 boosters. And it's just a great sign, I think, for our community and over the country as well, if we're at the point where we feel comfortable doing that. So that's where we are at this point. That was consistent with the tiers. To get to seated load equivalent is what we had hoped to be. Once we reach yellow in the county, which in Santa Barbara County, which we did, now those tiers really are, the blueprint is no longer in force. So it's really up to us. So we'll monitor that over the next few weeks. The other issues we wanted to talk about under this agenda item were, the restoration of transit services and really what it looks like. And we discussed that a little bit previously when we did the service plan for August, but as it pertains to the pandemic itself, the effect has been a reduction in workforce. We need more bus operators. That's really where we're at. And we are aggressively recruiting. Our HR department, we are bringing in temporary contractor to just focus on recruiting of drivers and other critical positions. And that's what that person is going to do pretty much full time for us for a number of months to try and get that up. What we've included in the staff report there is some historical data to show you we've been able to recruit and hire drivers in these numbers over the course of a year historically. That's what we're going to need to do. And that's really what's going to delay the full restoration of services. So for this August, we have our plan. I'd like to have a few more drivers lined up by that point. So we're working aggressively to do that. But before we're able to restore some of the other services that we recommended continuing the suspension in 2022, we'll need to get closer to that number around 20 that we're attempting to hire. So I wanted to update you on that. And if you have any questions regarding the restoration of services or workforce limitations, because it's really not about the finances at this point. The federal aid that we received will really provide us with a few years, in my opinion, to get through this. But it's really the workforce limitation that's holding us up. So if you have any questions on really that topic, happy to answer them now.
Director McCoy. You're muted, Chuck.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I don't like to bring up the subject, but have we thought about going to a firm that has drivers available and hiring them temporarily to get us through this period, where we have such shortages?
No, I'd say at this point, I have a lot of confidence in our plan moving forward with our HR department to really do the hiring that we need to get the numbers up to where they need to be. So I'm pretty confident with the path we're on at this point. I don't think we need to get to that point.
Okay. Any other questions on service? Okay, Jerry, go ahead.
Okay, the next item was board and committee meetings. We're recommending the first in-person meeting for the board of directors for a regular scheduled meeting to be September, after Labor Day. We could potentially do one in July, but really we're still waiting to see what Cal OSHA requirements are going to be as it pertains to the workplace. Because when we hold an in-person meeting at our facility, obviously our employees participate in that. So we will need to figure out what Cal OSHA requirements are going to be. Maybe we'll have some, it'll be clear that after this Thursday. I can't say for certain it will be, but then we'll have to figure out what our protocols will be, following that. So again, the patience for the next couple of weeks. So at this point, I'd recommend September as our target for the first in-person meeting. Also for committee meetings, we really kind of suspended those at the beginning of the pandemic. And I think it's time at the board, go ahead, start getting engaged again with us at that level. And we can continue this process. The governor has extended the authority to conduct these sort of meetings consistent with Brown Act through at least I think the end of the year. I think it may be until further notice actually is the order. So we can conduct them in some type of hybrid type of meeting as well. And we'd be happy to explore that, but we're kind of looking for your feedback on that.
That's a good question. Okay, so to the board, is there other questions or comments on what Jerry has outlined as our potential in-house meeting? I have Paula, Director Purdy.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I think that's just a comment. I think that's an excellent idea. I know we're taking it pretty slow at City Hall as well. Shooting for maybe July, but could be August. So I think that's wise. I agree with that.
I do too. A comment I had is I saw something. I think I saw the county's opening their offices this week.
Yeah.
We're not going to be the first ones out there to see how protocols are developed. So let's see what happens, Jerry.
Yeah, on the office, we'll probably continue to have the administrative office available by appointment only. Again, we want to get the workplace rules down from Cal OSHA.
Yep.
I'd like to do that probably into September and then bring it back in a phased approach when we know that we have our practices in place. So, and I think that's probably in line with what we're going to see with the cities and the county. I think reopening may be phased in, and perhaps that's just not clear yet. We'll all find out over the next few weeks.
Yeah, sure will. Okay. Any other questions on this one? Okay, Jerry, we're getting close to 9, and I know we wanted to get to our closed session close to 9. So you want to wrap it up?
Yeah. Last item actually was a declaration of fiscal public health emergency that went into effect March 27, 2020, which extended, essentially extended certain authority to the general manager throughout the pandemic. And my recommendation is in September, you reconsider one of the items on there, which has to do with my ability to contracting authority, essentially, that it exceeds what I normally have in order to respond to the pandemic. I think we're at a point, at least I hope we are by September, that we could probably lift that one requirement. The others really have more to do with bus emergency, the transit services and responding to, the pandemic, that sort of thing. I'm not sure we're out from under that. We'll still have some services suspended. Maybe by the end of the calendar year, we'll be in position. Hopefully we have enough operators that won't need that authority any longer. We can go back to the regular process. So I just wanted to give you an update on what we recommend as it pertains to the declaration.
That's great.
Okay.
Okay, any final comments from board members? So Jerry and Mary, Mr. Estrada, that's great. Again, it's been a heck of a year. And what you guys have done have just been amazing again, because our people were out there on the front lines during the entire time. And it's been a real service that you've done to the community. So thank you both. And please pass on our thanks to everyone on staff in that regard.
We will, and it's greatly appreciated. Thank you to the board for all your support as we get through this. And I just would like to say again, on behalf of everybody here at MTD and the bus operators who are out there providing this service, they've just done an amazing job during difficult times. And I think we're all just so proud of the organization and everything everybody here has done to pull together to get through this. So thank you very much.
Here, here. Well said. Well said. Thank you. That one, we're going to go really quickly, Jerry. Item 8, General Manager's Report, and then we'll go into the closed session after that.
Okay, General Manager's Report. Really, I'm just happy to answer any questions. I do want to recognize the retirement of one of our bus operators, Mr. Art Rodriguez. We really want to wish him the best in his decision to retire. It's a great accomplishment, in one's life to get to that point, and really proud of him and wish him the best, in his retirement. So I wanted to acknowledge that. But other than that, happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the General Manager's Report.
Questions for the General Manager? Okay. Okay, Director Sheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I had one question regarding the numbers of hires by number. That was a chart that was in the General Manager Report. And over the past 5 years, it looks like 79 drivers have been hired. Is there some issue with retention?
No, I actually say we have a very high retention. We just had a number of drivers that were hired when you look at MTD over its 50-year history and when service levels were increased in the 70s, late 70s, when the TDA, Transportation Development Act, was passed and we were able to ramp up service levels. Really, at that point, we brought a lot of people on board. And over those years, the 80s as well, 90s, we were increasing service. So we had a number of drivers that have been with us 20, 30 years. They were really getting to a retirement age. And that's really, when I took over as general manager, that was one of the things my predecessor had told me. She was one of them. She was our first female bus driver hired in the 70s, Miss Fisher. And she told me, Jerry, there's a lot of us that are going to be heading out into retirement as I leave as well, as she did. And she wasn't wrong. It's exactly what we've seen. So we've seen that transition. But I'd say during our next quarterly report, we can provide you with some more details on that to satisfy the question as well.
Thank you.
Mr. McCrory.
Yeah, there's been, I'm in this neighborhood network down in Carpinteria, and there's been a couple of instances in the network, and also I think there was something in the local paper about the shuttle service, and people seem to want something. They want to have some sort of an answer. Can we give them kind of a preliminary? I don't want to speak up as a board member and say, oh yeah, this is what we think we're going to do. Is there something that we can put out there that gives people an idea as to when the shuttle service may open, if at all?
Yeah, what I could do is, we did present to the Transportation Committee for the City of Carpinteria recently, and what we shared with them was, what we shared with the board. It understood was that we are targeting maybe early 2022 or sooner for the Seaside Shuttle, depending on the availability of bus operators. I did monitor the One Social site that I think you're referencing, and I thought Councilmember Clark, who was part of the Transportation Committee, did a great job of articulating exactly what I would say, which is MTD intends to restore the Seaside Shuttle once they have enough bus operators, and they're hoping to do it by the end of the year. He was definitely right on point with that, and I appreciated it. Obviously, we try not to get into social media posts back and forth, but I could talk to City Administrator Derflinger and see if he wants me to give the identical presentation to City Council, so that information gets out and it'd be picked up, I'm sure, certain by the Coastal View at that point. So I can approach him about that and see if he would like me to, if he feels it's necessary.
Great. Thank you, Jerry.
Okay.
Any other questions on the general manager's report? Not seeing any. I'm going to call to the item 9. This is a recess to closed session regarding real property negotiations pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is 4678 Carial and 149 North San Antonio Road. The agency negotiators are the General Manager Jerry Estrada, District Outside Counsel Graham Lyons, the negotiating parties, Chandler Partners, and Con Am Group. Under negotiation, the price and terms of payment. Prior to going into closed session, we do take public comment, so I will check with the clerk. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak on this item?
I don't have any public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. Okay. At this point, we will go to you, General Manager Estrada, for you to go into closed session, and we will wait to hear that we are secure.
Thank you. Take a few minutes.